Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and I've got a tremendous guitar player and just a good guy, really successful in the music business. We're with Joel Hoekstra today. Joel lives in New York, and he currently plays for Whitesnake, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and Cher. He's also well known for his time spent with Night Ranger, the Broadway show Rock of Ages, his fill-in work with Farner, and his monthly column in Guitar World magazine. In addition to releasing 3 solo albums, in 2015, Joel released a critically acclaimed debut from his side project, Joel Hoekstra's 13, that was called Dying to Live. Here's a small sampling of some of the people Joel's performed, played, and recorded with, and I had to cut this down dramatically because we'd never get the interview going. Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, Scott Soto, Jim Pederick, I always mess up his name, I got that right, Jim Pederick from Ides of March and Survivor, Michael Sweet from Stryper, Mickey Thomas from Starship, Don Barnes from 38 Special, Amy Lee from Evanescence, Eric Martin from Mr. Big, Kip Winger, Joan Jett, Rik Emmett, Tommy Shaw, Robin Zander, Derek St. Holmes, Alan Parsons, that's a classic guy, man, Lynn Turner from Rainbow and Deep Purple, Donnie and Johnny Van Zant, Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon, Stephen Pearcy from RATT, Mike Reno from Loverboy, Nancy Wilson, Steven Adler, Sebastian Bach, Nugent, Glenn Hughes, Wyclef Jean, Martha Davis from Motels, Mark Slaughter, Nuno Betancourt, Henry Paul, Ray Parker Jr., Debbie Gibson, Tom Kiefer from Cinderella, and Mark Farner from Grand Funk Railroad. He's also done a lot of theater. He's done Rock of Ages, Broadway and off-Broadway, Love, Janice, off-Broadway, San Francisco, and a bunch of other places, and he's a monster player. Joel, thank you so much for your time, man.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks.
You're welcome. And he also has, probably the most awesome hair of anyone who's been on the show. Maybe you and Doug Bossy are actually neck and neck now, man.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Man, when did you move to New York, and what prompted that move? Because that's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, that was the top of 2001. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and little time in LA from basically 19 to 21 years of age, and then back to Chicago. And anyway, I was gigging with this girl, Kathy Richardson, with her band, and she landed the role of Janis Joplin in the show called Love, Janice. And so after it ran in Chicago, which I wasn't a part of, she was headed to New York to do it, and I basically lobbied and said, hey, I'd like to do that. It'd be so cool. And got an audition and got the gig, and so there you go. So I moved out to do that show called Love, Janice. It's sort of the long-winded explanation. And it ended up running 2 years. So by the time it closed, I was kind of like, well, I guess I live in New York now. I never had any desire to move to New York in my lifetime. I never thought I'd end up there, but I'm there.
Where do you live? You live in the city?
Yeah.
Wow. Were you playing the original lines or something close to the original lines of some of those Janis songs, Summertime, for example, that long intro?
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's beautiful. That's
it is, yeah. And I ended up doing gigs with Big Brother and the holding company through that because the music director was Sam Andrew, who passed away not too long ago, became a dear friend of mine, just a great guy. And so they basically throughout their career would always have different singers filling in for what was Janis Joplin back in the day, and a guitar player they had parted ways with, James Gurley. They always had somebody in to replace him, and they just kind of did that based on geography, So if there was gigs in the New York area, I kind of became that guy. Or in some cases, it was they'll fly you across the globe. Like I went to Thailand to play with them for 2 weeks, and that was a blast. So, they became dear friends of mine. Yeah, I did the whole SG up high, playing through a Fender amp with tons of spring reverb on. It was very much unlike what I'm doing nowadays with Whitesnake. I've been through a lot of phases in my career. I think people would be shocked to see some of that and go, "Holy crap, that's the same guy." But it is what it is. I don't regret any of it. I made a living and had a blast playing my guitar throughout my life. What's
the most offbeat thing you might have played that people would be shocked to hear, music-wise?
Oh man, geez, how much time you got? Because I've done everything. I've played weddings. I've done background music, classical at parties. I've done background jazz duos at parties. Stuff like that is usually pretty shocking to people to find out, I guess. The fact that I've actually played the electric slide before and things like that on gigs, you know. But again, all great learning experiences, and it helps you become a well-rounded musician.
It does, man. I don't usually ask this question, but this is a personal question because I grew up in New York, man. What's your favorite New York food?
Definitely Ray's Pizza. I'm just a huge fan. There's near my place that is just great, and one of my favorite, like, I don't care if I'm fat tomorrow foods.
Yeah, the pizza in New York is like nothing else. Hey, so for each of these situations, Joel, I was wondering if you could talk about how you got the gig and maybe a cool experience about working with this particular individual. Let's start with Alan Parsons.
Well, my bio sort of includes all the way from people I've just played on stage with one time through other things like scrap metal or Jim Peterick's World Stage. There were guys who'd come out and I'd be in the house band, which that's the case for Alan Parsons, all the way to things that bands that I've spent 7 or 8 years with or whatever. So Alan Parsons was just a one-time deal. He played on Jim Peterick's World Stage, and super nice guy. Got the opportunity to play his hits with them and have him hang out afterwards and be able to, schmooze with them a little bit and talk. And that was a blast for me.
Cool. How about Dee Snider?
So Dee is a little variety of things because, number one, he was in the show Rock of Ages towards, I guess, about 2/3 of the way through me being a part of that show. The over 6 years I did that show. So Dee was in it for a minute as the club owner, played an actual character in it, not himself. And then we ended up doing a couple of gigs that was under the moniker when he had that Dee Does Broadway album. So it's just Dee Snider, Dee Does Broadway. And then when he kind of ditched that and it was just Dee Snider, I did like a gig or two for his solo band. So we've played together a few times. Great guy, good friend, and hopefully we'll do more down the line.
Did you play like around the New York area? Because I know he's like a Long Island guy.
Yeah, they one of the gigs, the Dee Snider, I remember being in the Midwest somewhere though too. I can't remember where offhand.
And how'd you get the Rock of Ages?
Yeah, the Rock of Ages thing kind of came about through my philosophy of just working to stay busy at all times. I have a friend that lives a couple blocks from me in New York City who's a pit musician. He plays in the pits, and he said, "Hey, would you ever consider doing that?" And I was like, "Man, I haven't really done like the whole, reading 300 pages of music since high school, doing that kind of thing. I don't know if I'm the guy." And he was like, no, don't worry. We'll get you audio. You practice the book for a few weeks. And then whenever I need you, I'll call you and you come in. And so anyway, I subbed for him on all the shows he did for a little period there. And one of the shows, the last show I subbed for him was called Tarzan, that Phil Collins wrote the music for. And basically the keyboard player for that show became the music supervisor for Rock of Ages. So it was through like playing like traditional pit music in the pit and not even being up on stage that got me Rock of Ages. It's funny how sometimes things like that work out. And trust me, those other ones made no financial sense whatsoever. I put in hours and hours of work to get in once in a while to make like, I think a base salary thing, you make about $275 to play a pit show or something like that. So if you've practiced for a month to get a book together and you make $275, you're way below minimum wage. Yeah. So sometimes you do stuff like that, and then all of a sudden I get this Rock of Ages show that lasts over 6 years. So it all paid off in the end.
That's great, man. Where did you just mentioned that you've always had the philosophy of staying busy. Where did that come from?
I don't know. Maybe, I guess maybe my parents, I would say. That would probably be the closest thing.
They were hustlers?
To knowing why. Yeah, I think my mom definitely was a hard worker. So I'd say my mom. Yeah,
cool. Because that's not like, I think.
Now I sound like a professional athlete, right?
What's that?
Well, now I sound like a professional athlete, right? Just want to my mom.
No, because I mean, though that's not inherent in everybody, obviously. I mean, you meet people all day long. They're like, God, that guy's so lazy. And I mean, it takes work, and it takes, that has to be your thing to hustle. Like that's a deliberate thing. It's not like a random thing,
especially going into music, you better have that attitude. Otherwise you don't stand even close to a chance. I mean, it's, you're facing like a tidal wave that's coming through a window that's very narrow. So if you can't, you somehow got to not only get through the closing window, but while a tidal wave is smacking you in the face, trying to push you back in. So
I like that analogy. And then lastly, how'd you get the gig with Whitesnake? And what's maybe some wacky or bizarre rock and roll story you could talk about with them without naming names?
So, yeah, Whitesnake was kind of a combination of me putting out some feelers for it, and then a couple of people putting my name forward to David Coverdale. Most importantly, Phil Carson, who manages Farner, and actually Dee Snider. So Phil and I first met when Dee was in Rock of Ages, but Phil also tapped me in 2011 when Night Ranger was opening for Farner and Journey, when Mick Jones got sick. So I filled in for Mick Jones and Farner, and I learned it in a day. And I think that really opened Phil's eyes, and he went like, wow, this guy's, did a really great job on short notice. So when David needed somebody, I just thought, well, who would David respect that I could have send him an email where that would turn his head a little more than just getting like a video link from somebody, a musician or something. So that's how I got an audition, and everything worked out from there. Wow,
that's great, man. Well, it's good that how you made that happen, which is, that's the real cool story of it, I have a question. What's the raunchiest or most bizarre rock and roll story over your career? Again, not looking for gossip, not looking for names, just something that's like,
Well, certainly most of them, that I can't repeat come from Reb Beach, my guitar partner, Whitesnake. He's just like, I mean, there's stuff that I hear from Reb on the tour bus that I can't unhear, that's changed my life for the worse. But he's got a really funny one, actually, that I can tell about, with Alice Cooper having the giant snake back when Reb was in Alice Cooper's band, and the snake, which apparently they barely ever do this, took a shit on Reb's pedalboard during the show. And apparently a snake shit smells like beyond anything you've ever smelled in your life. It's so bad. So Reb, I guess, motioned for his guitar tech to help with it, and I guess it smelled so bad that when the guy was cleaning it up, he threw up on Reb's pedalboard. So he had the snake shit and vomit on his pedalboard during the gig. Yeah, so that's pretty raunchy and disgusting. There's one I can tell.
Yeah. And
trust me, others are just as bad, and I can't tell them.
Well, cool. Thanks, man. Hey, what are you working on now that you're excited about?
Well, I just came from Reno, actually helping a little bit with the Whitesnake mixes. So there's a new album coming out called Flesh and Blood. Yes, I know Poison used the title. No big surprise there, but David has a vision. So we've got, I think, a September release date now at this point, because David had a little serious bout, actually, with the flu that really wiped him out for a bit. The flu that's going around these days is just nasty. So right around the time we were going to shoot the video, it took him down. But there's going to be a video for the single coming out in May. And it's a real diverse album, though. The single, I'm kind of disappointed there's only one video, because it really only shows one side of what the album is, which I think is a nice blend for, all the Whitesnake fans. There's some traditional kind of old school stuff. There's stuff that sounds more like the, Geffen records, and everything in between, and even some uncharted territory, I think, for the band. So it's a nice diverse album, and looking forward to it.
And it's a September release date, you reckon?
September release. I don't know the exact one at this point. I don't even know if there is an exact one at this point, but I think right around that time frame.
Awesome. And name again, Joel? Sorry. Blood.
So the album is Flesh and Blood.
Awesome.
With the "and" being an ampersand, not word.
That's cool.
I know I'm trying to get guitar picks made. You don't want to have your guitar picks represent the wrong thing. So
I hear that.
Anyway.
Well, cool, man. Well, good luck with the record. And if you want to come on here to promote it when it comes out, you're more than welcome. You've been involved in so many different projects, and I was curious. I mean, really, all that hustling is, paid off. You've done a ton of great stuff with loads of people, and I was curious, what would you say, are the top 3 musical experiences you've had meaning like which ones left you feeling most satisfied musically?
That's really hard to answer because they're all different. It's like finishing albums always feels really good because it's like you work really hard on something, and the anticipation of having people hear it and what they're going to think of it is always, I think, special. So definitely each of my albums. I'm not going to give you a top three. I'm just going to give you kind of maybe some of the things that pop out. The gigs that are under the wire and under pressure, like with Night Ranger, I didn't have any rehearsals with them. I had to fill in basically as an audition to get the gig, and it was like learning 25 songs and going in and playing the gig on no rehearsal and a very limited sound check. So it's like, those gigs are like jumping out of a plane and not knowing if your parachute works, and then when it does, you're like, oh, thank God. When it goes well, and the aforementioned Farner fill in because that was under such duress, just doing that 24-hour period of learning their set and then flying down to Virginia Beach, and the gig was in front of 18,000 people with everybody from the tour on the side of the stage going, let's see how this works out. Neil Sean, like literally 10 feet from me with his arms crossed, checking it out, and me going, fuck, I just learned this, I can swear on this, right? Is that
you can say whatever you want. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And if you don't, I will do it.
Yeah, so those moments stick out for me. But the music business is not one big break. It's funny when people talk about their big break, and it's really just a series of hard-earned small breaks that the way it works. And sure, some can work out larger. I'm not saying that, there can't be some kind of big breaks for people, but they're usually a lot more hard-earned than people realize.
It's interesting. I've noticed that as a guy coming from the business world where it's the exact same thing, it's not – maybe once in a while it's one thing, but it's usually a series of small incremental things that kind of add up and open another door that wouldn't have been available to you. But it's very similar, running your small business, which is playing guitar.
Yep. It's, you got to look at it realistically. Let's say, just for instance, if The Edge was out of U2 tomorrow or something, but they said, we want to continue on, we want a new guitar player. Well, they're not going to hire a guy unless he's already been playing for huge audiences and is familiar with the landscape of the whole thing and understands how to be a professional. So they're going to hire from peers that are right around their level of success, which is immensely hard when you're U2 to think about. We could have used the Lindsey Buckingham analogy, right? Because he just got that from Fleetwood Mac. But, they're not going to pick a kid as amazing as he is in his basement, even if the kid is an amazing player. So you need to take that step by step professionally. The career building takes just as long as the playing building. It's they're not always the same thing. You can be an amazing player and not have a great career, and vice versa.
Man, that is really accurate. You said career building takes just as long as what was it?
Building your playing.
Yeah, building your. I think that's very accurate. So that's why, and I don't know if you want to go talk about this or not, and if you don't, that's totally cool. Like you see guys on YouTube that have they're quote YouTube sensations, but they're in their house.
Well, yeah, that's where you're going to use it. There's a sensationalistic factor that's there on YouTube that just doesn't play for longer than 5 minutes in real life. So if you want to charge money and, besides monetizing your YouTube, I guess, if you want to put on a concert, an hour of that can kind of get like, well, where's the music for the common man, So I've kind of tried to avoid a lot of that. I mean, I do lessons for Guitar World, and there's some stuff of me up like that, but I try not to be the guy who's like, let me set up my video camera today and make 9 million YouTubes of me shredding and things like that. It's just kind of not, I don't know. I'd rather become known as a good guitar player through the real world of playing music.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I agree. Hey, so you're originally from Chicago. You said, what was childhood like?
What was what like?
Your childhood growing up.
Oh, my childhood. I'm sorry. I couldn't understand you. Yeah, so, I was a suburban kid. And interestingly enough, I lived in a pretty blue-collar neighborhood, but my parents were classical musicians, and hence not being so well-to-do that we were in a fancy or rich neighborhood. So, it was all good, though, man. I had good friends and just into sports, like a lot of really young kids. And then when I found guitar at the age of 11, everything kind of took off, and I became a little more isolated, because I was so into that, and it was kind of like, took me off into my own world a little bit.
You said both of your parents were classical musicians.
Yeah.
What did they play?
Piano and organ, conducting.
So obviously that was a huge influence on you.
Yeah, in that there was music around the house all the time. They did get me going on cello at 3 and piano at 7, and I wasn't any good. I don't want to make people think I was playing, Bach when I was 3 years old. I was playing Old MacDonald Had a Farm. The point is I think it developed my sense of pitch and rhythm and learning how to read music and things like that. So when I started guitar at 11, my ear, like I learned a power chord, and my ear could already take me to playing a million songs, because I went, oh, I hear it now. That's all you do is move this chord around. And so like instantly I knew most Black Sabbath songs and things like that. So
which is
the benefits from it.
Yeah, that's probably served you very well over your career.
It did, definitely. I think, having that, learning music at a young age is really important, because your brain is just developing. I mean, allegedly you're really supposed to have some kind of music education beginning at 3 to really, make it all happen. But yeah, no complaints, man. It gave me a nice jump start.
Cool. When did you know you wanted to play professionally?
It's funny. I never feel like I made that decision, or never thought it would work out, but I just kind of kept going. But immediately would be the answer. Like as soon as I started at 11, I think I was so motivated. I was just doing that all the time. And I think I began kind of making some money at it at 14. I was teaching some guitar lessons already. So after only playing for 3 years, I already had my first guitar students. And, I held down some other jobs along the way there early on, but I definitely knew that I never made the decision. I was very lucky in that sense. Most people have to labor over what they're going to do with their life, but I had to labor through people going, what? And, being treated like a loser because you're going into it. And,
really?
It's things took off from, well, that's the nature of going into something like that when you live in the suburbs. People are like, they expect you to go into something where it's like guaranteed you're going to make good money, and, not like something in the arts where it's like, what? Like you're going into that? Like that, you're mental. Times have changed a little bit with that too. Nowadays it's a little more respected for some reason, but I think, when I was young, that was considered like, good luck with that, like that's never going to work out. Wow. And certainly, when your peers are graduating from college and immediately making salaries and have jobs, the girls tend to like them a lot more than the guy who's playing in bars, like a little bit and barely making money. And, so it is what it is. All good though. No regrets on any of it, man.
I would bet you redeemed that end of it over the years, no?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All good, man.
Everybody pays tuition in our careers, and I was, wondering if you'd be kind enough to share one or two mistakes you might have made along the way and what lessons you learned from them, if you did make them.
There's only really one big one I can think of, and that's just like having the confidence to realize if you just work hard at something, you're going to be fine. That's the ultimate lesson I could pass on to younger kids starting. It's just all about the work you put in. People are really into this whole feeling like victims when they're trying to learn an instrument and why they can't be good at it. Well, the only real reason is they're not spending enough time. They're not working hard enough, because I've never met a guitar player who played 8 hours a day every day that sucked. They're usually fucking amazing, and that's fine. And if you're amazing, you've got some ability to, now again, that comes to the other side. What do you do with that to be able to make a living? But that takes work too. So you have to find the balance between working on your playing and make sure that you're at a level that you're able to make some money with it. And the better you are, the better opportunity you have to do that. And then how hard you work at marketing that and turning that into a situation where you're building a career and building upon it, being good with people. That's really, really important, being good with people. It all pays off in the end. So, but again, I guess confidence and just not thinking that it's like this, you're in the right place at the right time. People use that all the time. Well, he was in the right place at the right time, or he got a lucky break. That's all bullshit.
It is bullshit.
All those things are bullshit. It's just a matter of how hard you've worked at each of the things I'm talking about, the developing your playing and developing your career.
Where did that being good with people, that is a really important thing. And I think because everybody's wrapped up in technology, that's a skill set that is dying. How did you particularly develop your skills with people?
It's, I mean, this is going to sound like kind of like I'm a religious zealot, but I'm going to just say it because I think it's true. But it's like, growing up, going to church and all that stuff, instills a humility in you that you realize you've admitted that there's something bigger than you in your life. I think a lot of people haven't admitted that there's anything bigger than them, and people think they're perfect sometimes. And, you have to realize you're imperfect and be able to say, I'm sorry. Or say, also let go of some of your visions of things when you're in a band. If there's 5 guys in a band, I like to say you only really get your way 20% of the time. Yeah. If you're doing more than that, you're probably being a dick, and the other guys probably don't like you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can voice your opinion, but realistically, if you're in a democracy in a band, it's things like that. Not holding your ideas and thinking that you're the end all be all. So you have to have some level of humility to be good with people. And that certainly factors in when you're dealing with people who are technically the boss. Like, when I worked in Night Ranger, having Jack, Brad, and Kelly, guys that spent 30-some years building up that band, who would I have been to say this is what needs to happen with Night Ranger? And there are people who are delusional enough to do these things when they get gigs or opportunities that just don't understand that you're working for them and you're there to make them happy and you do your best. And oftentimes these guys can be very generous, and it's the same with David Coverdale and Whitesnake. David spent 40 years building up Whitesnake. And, that's not to say that each of these scenarios, those guys weren't generous and give you opportunities to have creative input or even at times business input, but those had that opportunity has to come from them.
Yeah.
And, it's just the understanding that where you sit, having a good picture of where you really are in terms of the business, and having respect for it too, not just being like bitter about it. There's some people can I guess picture it, but they're just mad the whole time about it, and I'm not.
No, it sounds like you got a really healthy sense of, I make choices and I'm responsible for the outcome of the choice I make. And I'm also responsible to behave a certain way based on a particular choice I make.
Well, those are all complete 100% truths. I mean, there can be variables in life that would, turn you into an existentialist. I mean, I could walk out, turn the corner and have a semi come veering out of a lane and slam into me, and that obviously wasn't within my control, but we certainly control the majority of what happens in our lives, I do believe.
No, I agree with you. And I think it's almost critical to look for, like for me, even when bad shit happens, I always try to, look for what was my role in that, because number one, you learn, but number two, you don't feel like a victim. You're like, okay, well, I fucked that up because, I should have been smarter, whatever, I think
people sometimes are more comfortable as victims, so mentally it makes them feel good about themselves in a weird way. Even though you're pitying yourself, it's sort of giving yourself comfort, and it's important to try to avoid it.
Oh,
I'm not saying, look, I don't bat 1,000 on any of this stuff. I'm not preaching to people. I'm just saying what I've learned and what I try to avoid. And a lot of it does come down to this stuff that we're talking about. It's way more important than whether or not you learn to sweep a B7, a B7 flat 5 arpeggio.
I agree with you 100%, man. Flip side of that question is, are there one or two particular things you did that at the time might have been out of your comfort zone but turned into really big breaks for you?
Well, that's been a lot of stuff, like kind of every step of the way is always a little bit of a learning experience every time there's a transition. if I had to put my finger on a moment, there was like not going to say it was out of my wheelhouse, but I remember getting the Trans-Siberian Orchestra audition and landing the gig. And at the time I was already in Night Ranger and had Rock of Ages. And I thought, well, how the hell am I going to do this? Because I'll have to sub out of Night Ranger for November, December, which I've never done. They'll probably fire me if I say I can't be a part of the gigs in November, December. Rock of Ages, it wasn't a problem. I could sub that out, but I was starting to go, is this too much? Am I taking on too much? Is it all going to fall down like a house of cards, if I take this on? I get fired from Night Ranger and maybe TSO doesn't work out and the Rock of Ages closes 6 months later and I'm going, oh my God, I thought I had 3 things and now I have none. But it worked out, taking on the TSO thing and going through that actually really built, and I just did my best to have clear lines of communication with the Night Ranger guys and be able to sub that out and continue to build. And all of those things have, TSO, that's really paid off for me now. I mean, I'm in, I guess, year 9 of it right now. Wow.
Are you in the East or West?
East.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So to be that far in with it, that's obviously, that was a huge decision. And I remember in the moment thinking, like, should I even be saying I can do this? Cause I don't know if I can. And, obviously it was a very smart decision to forge forward with it.
So you had a lot of like negative self-talk or chatter going on up there. And you just said, let me fight through it sort of.
I don't know about negative, but just trying to weigh it through. Like, how's it, how's that going to work? Am I going to, and I just kind of had to have faith that hopefully people would value me enough to keep me around, mainly Night Ranger at that time. Just go, hopefully there's a way for me to have somebody else come in for me November, December and be able to still be doing this. And that did work out for that period.
That's awesome. If you've been doing this a while, if you had to go back and give advice to, young Joel, what would you have told him?
It's just the confidence thing. I could give you a short answer, but that's definitely it. The working hard. That's just the whole secret.
All right, let's talk about gear for a few minutes. What's your how many guitars do you have? First of all, I can't even imagine.
I actually don't know. It's not that much for what you would think. I think I'm in the 30s somewhere.
That's really reasonable.
Honestly. Yeah, it is. It's really reasonable. Yeah. I mean, I live in New York City. My place is not big, So, but I have some guitars out with Whitesnake's gear that just live in LA. The guitars I had custom made for that gig. Currently, I have some guitars in Vegas that I use for the Cher gig, and the rest are basically in my house. Sans my original, not my original guitar, but my second guitar, which is in my mom's garage in Florida. But that's it, man. So I would need to give you. I need to count. I don't know.
What's like your go-to guitar right now, and what other 2 guitars might round out your top 3?
Well, my gold top Les Paul has been the one that's sort of meant the most to me over the years. Even when I don't use it on stage, like I don't use it on stage with Whitesnake or TSO, it's always with me on tour. I practice on it and warm up, and that's what I prepare for almost every gig on at home. And so it's my main guitar, even though I don't really use it on. I use it with the Cher gig right now a little bit, but it doesn't get used with Whitesnake or TSO. But it is my main guitar, and I did use it on the whole Whitesnake album and my whole previous album, the Joel Hoekstra's 13 album.
Is that with P90s, or you have humbuckers in there? Or?
No, just the humbuckers. Yeah, the burst buckers it came with.
What would be like 2 and 3, number 2 and 3?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So I guess I would round it out with, I really like the custom guitars I had made for Whitesnake. So I'm just going to keep going with Les Pauls, probably the white and the black one with those. And, there's a white custom that doesn't have any of that stuff on it that I play with TSO that I really like a lot too. So, but it's all Les Pauls.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 are all Les Pauls.
That's very cool, man. Do you have any weird or interesting stories behind how you acquired any of those?
Not really. I mean, I'm not a big trader, seller, or anything like that. I mean, having the custom Whitesnake guitars was a challenge, because when I joined the band, I was like, I want to start with all new gear and not come out with the gold top, which Doug Aldrich was that was his signature guitar in the band all those years. And then you can already read the fan complaints before you're even, before you've recorded one note that, oh, look at this guy. He thinks he's trying to be Doug with his gold top. So I thought it served me well to have my own thing going on. But I definitely wanted to play Les Pauls because I like the sound, and I think that's a huge part of Whitesnake, period, is that Les Paul sound. So anyway, I reached out to Gibson. I had the idea of having medallions set into Les Pauls, and then we were doing the Purple album at the time, so I wanted to have Strats done too. So I had these gold medallions made at a mint that have the Whitesnake emblem, and I had Gibson lay them into a white and black custom Les Paul, and they did this cool kind of abstract snake stencil on the top that almost looks like Asian writing in a way. And then Fender did the same thing for me with a couple of US Strats. And then my friends at Atomic Guitars did this amazing purple crystal guitar with a gold crystal WS on the top that, people can check these out online. They're all over the place. But those guitars were all special. That was a special time, just creating the whole thing of new gear and coming in with 5 brand new guitars for a gig was really fun.
Yeah, but gets you pretty enthusiastic. Have you ever sold a guitar you wish you can get back?
Only my first one, because I did that to buy my second one when I was a kid, and my mom sold it to a coworker in the suburb of Hinsdale, Illinois. And then years later, I used to teach in basically Darien. I guess that was in Darien. I'm trying to think what town that the store was in that I taught in, but it was in the Hinsdale area. Somebody came in with that style of guitar for lessons. I used to teach 70 students a week, and a lot of them were
Holy
beginners.
Crap.
So this kid comes in with that guitar, and I went, man, where'd you get that? And he said, at this store in Hinsdale. And I went, I wonder if the person who bought it from us sold it to this store or sold it on consignment there. And this kid said it had a lot of fretwear on it, which beginner guitars like that normally don't, because kids don't practice that much, So I had the thought, man, I wonder if that's my first guitar, but how would I know? And I couldn't buy it because I couldn't say with certainty that it was.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, it's a drag not to have my first guitar.
Let's talk about Desert Island Discs, man. If you had to pick I want to ask you influences. Is there anybody that influenced you musically and playing wise that out of the ordinary people be surprised to hear?
Yeah, well, the parents, and then Angus Young was the visual, I want to start because that guy's awesome and I want to be like him. And then there's lesser known guys that were big influences on me. My second guitar teacher, who went on to have a guitar career himself, TJ Helmerich, who's an amazing player and engineer and great friend of mine. And, that's somebody who people would be like, who? I don't know who he is, except guitar players. A lot of guitar players know who he is. But he was a big influence on me. And then also Brett Garsed, who TJ made albums with, was a big influence on me. And, that's somebody who, again, a lot of people aren't like, you mean it's not, the stock list of players, but those are 2 guys that people haven't heard of as much that were huge influences on me.
Very cool. Desert Island Discs. If I asked you to pick your top 3 CDs or albums in no particular order, and knowing this can change tomorrow, what's your knee-jerk reaction? What would be your top 3 records?
That's a tough one. I mean, I might go with mellower stuff, just because I'd be on a desert island. But I always say the Eagles' greatest hits with this would be a good one because there's so many good songs. And I'd have to go with Back in Black if I wanted to rock out, and maybe I'd go with The Wall for if there were any mushrooms growing on the island.
I hear you, man. I remember when I got that record, it was really mind-blowing, It was...
The Wall is amazing. Yeah. It's an amazing album, yeah.
But I felt that way when I listened to Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here as well, so...
I connected with The Wall much more for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, Dark Side of the Moon is more popular, but The Wall, for whatever reason, was one that connected with me more.
Let's talk about you. What's something that you learned about yourself along this journey?
Man, that's kind of a tough one. I guess I would just say it'd be the confidence thing again, that I didn't have a lot and I should have.
That's I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's not an uncommon thing for people in general.
I mean, I think, young people, it's very rare to be super confident, but I think in the end, if you just learn, if you work really hard, there's no reason not to be confident.
What do you like most about yourself, man?
That I know I'm far from perfect.
That's a good answer. I like that. And if you could change one thing about yourself, what would that be?
There's a lot. I mean, I'd like to do better, and we're always striving to do better in every area of our life. So it's very tough for me to put the finger on one thing, but it's just doing better at all the areas of my life that would enhance my life.
Are you a type A personality?
Type A? What is that? You'll have to break it down for me. I'm not that smart.
Oh, no. Type A are what? Type A personalities, like, very driven, fairly intense, ambitious, go-getter type, got a lot of things going on.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm probably a mix of the two. I think I do that without being overly aggressive and dickish, though. Yeah. I would never screw anybody over to get ahead, or I would never. It's all that stuff kind of comes, like, for instance, I don't put money first. I don't put, like, I want to be rich in life. I put guitar first, and I let the money come from that. I don't do anything else outside of that. I don't put my efforts into, I get people all the time, well, you should invest, man. You should go into do real estate or the stock market. It's like, I don't want to do that. It's going to divide my attention from what I do. I don't need to be a gazillionaire. I just want to do what I do. That's my definition of success, is getting through life, being able to do this. That's it.
Best childhood memory?
I'm going to go outside of the guitar thing and just say I remember Christmas getting Atari when that came out, and that was awesome. And just like, going to church, but couldn't wait to get home from church to play Space Invaders. There's something like extra fun about that time period, about getting that.
Very cool. Space Invaders was awesome. Tell me something about yourself people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Well, I have a lot of anxiety on stage. I'm a very nervous guy, and so that's something people always say, oh, you're so good on stage. I'm like, I'm always so fucking nervous. Like, every gig of my life, it's something I've fought and battled. So that's usually something that surprises people. Yeah, that is surprising.
You seem like a very even-tempered guy, man. Like you said, you're a mix of both. And I could see that, because you're definitely very driven and a hustler, but you're like, you don't seem like super intense. You're very, very even keel, very mellow.
Yeah, I think it just comes from, I think when people suffer from that, it's because maybe the gig is overly important to them, which I think stems back to me growing up playing music and, just at such a young age and everything like that it's just so instilled in me. I think I just look at all this stuff with such wide eyes, like about how, I'm just so into it all that I make too big a deal of it in my head. And, I think that's where it stems from.
Sure. Do you have any non-musical superpowers?
Pretty good at basketball. I played from like a lot of like going to the YMCA and stuff like that, being from 19 years old all the way till I kind of stopped right about 30, but I used to go about every day. So I got good there for a minute. I'm pretty rusty now.
You look like a big guy. You're tall, right? I would imagine you look like pretty tall.
I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
I'm 6'3". But I did get good at basketball for a minute. And when I was a kid, I was a great pitcher in Little League. I was like the top pitcher in the league. And so there's, other stuff I'm good at. And in grade school, I did a lot of cartooning, doodling, and drawing. So I'm a pretty decent artist too.
That's a really I draw a little bit. That's a very relaxing thing to do. I find it super relaxing, man.
Yeah, I guess so. I mainly do it for my kids nowadays more than anything. If, they're like, Dad, can you draw this for me? That's kind of become a thing. And I'll draw it for them and we'll hang it up on the wall so they have it.
Cool. Biggest business or personal win?
Just getting this far. That's pretty much it, man. It's all those little steps. So it's, again, there's never like the one moment, but getting this far would be huge.
Any bad habits?
I'll just go with like eating. Eating is like, something that I still use as a reward, and I'm not very rational about it,
Dude, you must have great metabolism because you look like super fit, thin dude. So,
well, I do exercise. I love to exercise, and I do 6 days a week. I've been through a lot of phases though with weight in my life. I've been, 20, 30 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I've done that extreme weight loss thing a couple times in my life where I'll drop like 40 pounds and where I'll make a huge difference. And so that's from the eating thing. I'm just, born with a huge appetite, I guess. I just love eating. So it's been difficult for me to maintain.
What kind of working out do you do? Do you do cardio or lift weights or both or?
It's mainly like a in-room calisthenic driven thing because I didn't want to have an out on the road to say, oh, there's no gym in this hotel, I can't work out or whatever. So I kind of created something that wouldn't let myself get out of that. That being said, if there is a gym nowadays, I like to go hit the gym because it's less reps and things like that. But no, I mix it up. I mean, I usually work out. It's like a good 40-minute workout or something like that. But
That's
it's
great.
Combination of upper body, lower body, core, and stretching.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. You have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
It's like, pretty normal guy stuff, sports and movies. That's my release from it. I really am a big Cubs fan right now. They have a good team, so I'm, very into that. And the Bulls with basketball, who, really grabbed me growing up during the Jordan Pippen years and everything. That was the 6 championships, and they're not as good nowadays, but I still find myself following them every day. And movies, I'm one of those guys that when I find great movies, I'll watch them over and over and over. And so I have a list of movies that's, I don't know how deep, but probably 100 movies or so that I'll just watch at any time.
Cool. You've been in New York since 2001, and you haven't been a Yankee fan or a Rangers fan or a Jets fan?
No, I tried the sports is a big deal in Chicago. It's a huge deal there. So, look, after the Bulls-Knicks stuff with me growing up, I could never be a Knicks fan. No way.
It's hard to root for the Knicks, and I'm a Knicks fan.
I tried that when I moved to New York. I thought, well, they're in the American League. The Cubs are in the National. I could root for the Yankees and be a Yankees fan until should they ever meet in the World Series or play each other in the regular season. And it just didn't work. They're too... it's all that money. They just pay for their whole team, and there's just no development there. It's just kind of annoying more than anything.
Speaking of Yankees, have you ever crossed paths in Guitar World with Bernie? I'm having a brain fart now. What's that? Yeah. Have you ever crossed?
Yeah. He mentioned me in his book, which I was blown away. I mean, we never met. But I read in his book, it's him talking about going to see a Night Ranger concert, and he said their guitar player, Joel Hoekstra, is amazing or whatever. And I was like, I can't believe I'm reading that. That's insane.
That's really cool.
No, I just played with another guitar player who actually plays in Bernie's band.
Gil.
Yeah,
Gil,
exactly.
Yeah. I interviewed Gil. Yeah, I think he's the one who introduced you to me.
Oh, okay, right on. That's right.
Yeah. Bernie. He plays with Bernie all the time.
Yeah, so everybody that I know that's worked with him, because my friend Joel Rosenblatt has worked with him before too, says he's a super nice guy, but we've never met. But I'd love to sometime, obviously, and not necessarily off of the baseball thing, but just to play chat guitar or whatever and pick his brain. But that's cool.
Who's had the biggest influence on your life?
I'll go with the sports figure answer again. My mom. I mean, it'd have to be, right? Because your patterns are set all the way from being an infant with that, so it's got to be.
Most important lesson your business has taught you?
Not to make too big a deal over one thing.
Yeah, it's a real valuable
Sometimes
lesson.
you can tell yourself people just don't care. You always care about your personal scenarios about 100 times more than the world cares. And that's why people flippantly make, keyboard warrior comments and things like that. They usually just don't care as much as you. They think they're just making a little comment.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? When you read bad stuff about yourself. And so it's, you got to just realize people just don't care at the same level.
100%. And I think it's ridiculous. And I think it's actually foolish to assume otherwise. Why would they?
Yeah, well, I would.
When it comes down to it. 2 more questions, man. Best advice you've ever been given, and by who?
Best advice I've ever been given. I don't know who necessarily gave it to me, but so again, I'll take it back to the church thing. Sorry to be overly religious on you in this interview, but I think it's just to be able to forgive people is, I think, a lost art and very important these days. People are like really not good at that nowadays. Everybody thinks that they're perfect and never makes a mistake. And, the ability to say you're sorry for something, because I recognize the fact that I haven't always done exactly what I've wanted. I mean, far from it. There's lots of stuff in my life where I'm like, why did I say that? Or why did I do that? And, so I think the ability to say I'm sorry and to also forgive people who maybe on paper you'd say, well, they screwed me over, they did me wrong. It's like, it's really important to let go of that stuff. There's nothing that's been done to me in this world that I can't let go of.
And if you don't let go of that shit, man, it just sits inside and festers you. It's not good.
Yeah, I feel you.
There's nothing good about that, man.
Well, it really is true. What goes around comes around. That's such a true saying, because if you think about it, if I was rude to you in conversation right now, you're not gonna come back with being pleasant with me in conversation. You come back with being rude, right? So you generate that. You what you're putting out, you're going to generate back to yourself. So why not generate the fact that people would forgive me or be kind to me? I try to send that out into the world and have that come back.
It's really weird, man. When I hit around 50. I stopped doing that. Like, if someone was rude to me, and I grew up in the Bronx, and I'm a typical New York guy, inherently like that, and I'd be like, well, fuck you. I stopped doing that altogether, and for selfish reasons, because I found that I said, man, if I don't react, I'm just giving me stress. So now, if someone does something like that to me, I either just literally walk away. But I just mentally delete it, or I'll say, man, what made you say that? Really calm. It's really weird. You
have to learn to rationalize through those moments. It's the world needs to learn it. I mean, it would lead us towards a lot more of no war in the world. If the world leaders could kind of rationalize through things and go, look, hi. But again, a lot of stuff, they like to pin that on religion, but it all comes down to money. That most of that stuff basically comes down to arguing over money, the world leaders. So it's anyway, talking about bigger stuff than a guy who plays guitar here. But
or me, I hear you. Yeah. Last question, man, and you've really been a pleasure, and I appreciate your time. What's been the biggest change in your personality over, say, the last 7 to 10 years, and how much of this change has been deliberate, like you working on it, and how much is just a natural part of aging?
I think it's all a natural part of aging, man, but I'm always trying to learn. And the biggest change, geez, I don't know, man. That's really hard to say, because 7 to 10 years, there's been a lot of changing. I'm constantly evolving, I think, and trying to do better as a person. And, so sorry, it's hard to give you a one thing.
No, that's totally cool, man. Just keeping it real. That's the best thing here, man. I can't thank you enough for everything. Let's tell people where they can find you. First of all, September, the new Whitesnake album's coming out. It's called Flesh and Blood. Where else could people find you, and where can they find out where to see you in tour and on gigs? Okay, so I have a very difficult name, but I'm going to spell it for you as I'm going to direct you to my .com here, but JOEL HOEKSTRA. So joelhoekstra.com, and you can link over to any of my social media stuff from there, and actually have a pretty comprehensive website that people can take a look at and learn a lot about me. So maybe they'll pop in and give it a visit. I would encourage everybody to check it out. His website is very detailed. And Any final words of wisdom, man?
No, just, I mean, anybody that's come to a show or bought a recording or anything like that, thanks for the support, because that's what it's all about, just trying to get this far and get through life doing this, and it's all good.
Thank you so much for everything, man. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks again to Joel Hoekstra for spending time with us. Please check him out online. It's Joel Hoekstra, HOEKSTRA.com. Check out the new Whitesnake album in September. It's called Flesh and Blood. And support Joel and come out and see him on tour. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes, along with early product announcements and discounts. And remember, happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.